It was supposed to be the most guarded secret in royal history. A birth story wrapped in privacy, protected by the most powerful family in Britain, and hidden behind the heavy doors of Portland Hospital. But sometimes, the people who try hardest to hide the truth are the ones who accidentally reveal it. For years, we have been told a specific version of how Archie was born. We were told about the romance, the candles, the privacy, and the perfect, peaceful arrival of a new prince. But recently, that story has started to fall apart. And it didn't crumble because of a leak from a tabloid or a paparazzi photo. It crumbled because of the very people who told the story in the first place. When you look closely at the timeline Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have presented to the world, you don't just find small errors. You find medical impossibilities. You find physical contradictions. And you find a timeline that doesn't just bend the rules of physics, it breaks them entirely. There is one specific claim that has caused medical professionals, hospital staff, and insiders to finally break their silence. It is a claim that seems small on paper but is impossible in practice. In his memoir, Spare, Prince Harry wrote that Meghan gave birth to Archie, recovered, and was back home at Frogmore Cottage within 2 hours of the delivery. 2 hours. To the average person, that sounds fast. To a mother, that sounds uncomfortable. But to a doctor, a nurse, or anyone who knows how the human body works, that statement is a smoking gun. Because when you do the math, when you account for the drive, the discharge papers, the medical checks, and the recovery from anesthesia, that 2-hour window reveals a lie so big that it threatens to bring the entire narrative crashing down. And the closer you look, the stranger it gets. This is the story of the 60-minute birth, the phantom doctors, and the medical mystery that the royal family is desperate for you to ignore. Let's start with the most basic element of any story, the clock. According to Prince Harry's own written account, the couple left Portland Hospital and were back in the safety of Frogmore Cottage 2 hours after Archie took his first breath. On the surface, it sounds efficient. But let's break down what that actually means in the real world. The drive from Portland Hospital in central London to Frogmore Cottage in Windsor is not a short trip. Even with a police escort, even with clear roads, and even with a driver who knows the route perfectly, that drive takes 60 minutes. There is no shortcut. There is no teleportation device. That is a 1-hour journey. So if they were home 2 hours after the birth and the drive took 1 hour, that leaves exactly 60 minutes for everything else. 60 minutes. In that single hour, we are expected to believe that a woman who had just undergone a major medical event, a woman who Harry claims had 2 epidurals, pushed out a baby, delivered the placenta, was stitched up, cleaned up, and monitored for immediate postpartum hemorrhaging. We are expected to believe that the pediatricians checked the baby's airways, heart rate, and reflexes. We are expected to believe that the hospital administration processed the discharge papers, the security team secured the exits, the car was loaded, and Meghan walked out of the hospital on her own 2 legs, all in 60 minutes. Any mother listening to this knows exactly why that is impossible. Hospitals, especially high-end private facilities like Portland, have strict protocols. They do not release patients immediately after birth because the first hour is the most dangerous time for both mother and child. It is the golden hour where bleeding risks are highest, where blood pressure can spike, and where anesthesia effects are still wearing off. To suggest that a hospital with the reputation of Portland would allow a duchess, a woman carrying a child in the line of succession, to walk out the door while her epidural was likely still numbing her legs is not just a lie. It is an insult to the intelligence of everyone reading the book. But the timeline is only the first crack in the foundation. The real problems begin when we look at the scene Harry described inside the delivery room. In Spare, the Duke of Sussex paints a picture that feels less like a hospital room and more like a scene from a Hollywood romantic comedy. He describes the electric candles flickering in the corner. He describes the photo of Princess Diana placed gently on the table. He describes the soul music playing softly in the background. It is a beautiful image. It is curated. It is aesthetic, and according to insiders familiar with the realities of labor wards, it is completely detached from reality. Then there is the Nando's chicken. Harry claims that while Meghan was in the early stages of labor, bouncing on a purple birthing ball, he and his bodyguards ordered Nando's chicken to the hospital. He describes eating it calmly, enhancing his chill vibe. This detail might seem charming to some, a relatable moment of a hungry dad-to-be, but to security experts and hospital staff, this sets off alarm bells. Portland Hospital is a fortress. When a royal is admitted, the security protocols are suffocating. The idea that bodyguards were running out to a high street fast food joint, picking up a takeout bag, and bringing unvetted food into a sterile, high-security environment is laughable. And then comes the laughing gas. Harry writes, with a strange sense of pride, that he consumed the entire canister of nitrous oxide meant for his wife. He describes taking slow, penetrating hits of the gas to calm his own nerves, to the point where, when the nurses came to give Meghan pain relief, the tank was empty. He paints this as a funny, clumsy husband moment. But let's look at this through the lens of a medical professional. Nitrous oxide is a controlled substance in a hospital. It is medication. It is not a toy, and it is certainly not a recreational drug for the husband to use while his wife is in labor. In a real scenario, a nurse finding a partner inhaling the patient's pain relief would not giggle and replace the tank. They would intervene. They would assess the situation. It would be a serious breach of protocol. The fact that Harry describes this scene as a slapstick comedy routine suggests that perhaps he wasn't describing a memory, but rather a scene he thought would sound entertaining to a reader. It feels scripted. It feels like a performance. And unfortunately for them, the medical details only get worse from here. If the laughing gas was a red flag, the epidural claim is the smoking gun. In his memoir, Harry explicitly states that Meghan had 2 epidurals. He uses this phrase to emphasize the pain, the drama, and the intensity of the birth. But anyone who has worked in anesthesiology or anyone who has had an epidural knows that this statement makes absolutely no sense. An epidural is not a shot. It is not a pill you pop. It is a procedure where a catheter, a tiny, flexible tube, is inserted into the epidural space in the spine. Once that catheter is in, it stays in. If the pain returns or if the medication wears off, the anesthesiologist does not remove the tube and start over. They simply walk over to the pump and increase the dosage. They top it up. There is virtually no scenario in modern medicine where a doctor would remove a functioning epidural catheter only to perform the invasive, delicate, and risky procedure of inserting a second one immediately after. It adds unnecessary risk of spinal headaches, infection, and nerve damage. For Harry to claim she had 2 epidurals reveals a fundamental lack of understanding of what was supposedly happening in that room. And this brings us back to the timeline. Let's assume for a moment that in this chaotic, fictional version of medicine, she did have 2 epidurals. Do you know what happens when you have that much anesthesia in your system? You cannot walk. Your legs are heavy, numb, and useless. You require a wheelchair. You require hours of observation to ensure the sensation returns correctly. You do not, under any circumstances, hop into a car 60 minutes later and endure a bumpy 1-hour drive to Windsor. The physics of the 2 epidural claim and the 1-hour discharge claim are mutually exclusive. They cannot both be true, and in all likelihood, neither of them is. Just when the story seemed like it couldn't get more tangled, Meghan herself introduced a new twist. In a recent podcast episode, while speaking to a guest, the Duchess revealed that she suffered from postpartum preeclampsia. This is a serious, life-threatening condition. Preeclampsia involves dangerously high blood pressure, excess protein in the urine, and a risk of seizures or strokes. When it happens postpartum, it is terrifying. It requires immediate, aggressive medical treatment. The standard treatment for severe preeclampsia is a magnesium sulfate drip. This is not a pleasant treatment. It makes you feel like your body is on fire. It requires you to be bedbound, often with a catheter, under constant nursing supervision for at least 24 hours, sometimes days. You cannot leave the hospital. You certainly cannot travel. And this is where the narrative snaps in half. If Meghan had postpartum preeclampsia, where was the recovery time? Let's look at her schedule immediately following the birth of Archie. Within weeks, she was spotted at the Trooping the Color. She looked radiant, with no visible swelling, a hallmark symptom of preeclampsia, which leaves women with puffy faces and swollen ankles for weeks. Shortly after that, she was flying. She flew to Ibiza for a vacation. She flew to Nice for Elton John's villa. She walked the red carpet at the Lion King premiere, engaging with Beyoncé and Jay-Z, looking poised and perfect in heels. A woman recovering from postpartum preeclampsia is not hopping on private jets. She is not walking red carpets in stilettos. She is resting, recovering, and managing a blood pressure condition that could kill her if she exerts herself. The juxtaposition of her claim, "I had this deadly condition," and her reality, "I was jet-setting across Europe," is jarring. It forces us to ask, was the condition exaggerated for sympathy, or was the recovery period completely fabricated? Because medically, you cannot have it both ways. You cannot be on death's door with high blood pressure one day and flying to the south of France the next. When a future king is born, or even a spare to the heir, there is usually a team of doctors proud to sign their names to the history books. When Prince George was born, we saw the signatures. We knew the names of the consulting gynecologists. It is a matter of public record. It is tradition, yes, but it is also accountability. With Archie, that accountability vanished. For months, rumors swirled about who actually delivered this baby. The name Dr. Penelope Law was floated in the press. She is a renowned obstetrician at Portland Hospital. But then something strange happened. Reports surfaced that Dr. Law's husband denied her involvement. The story was walked back. To this day, there is a cloud of mystery over who exactly was in that room. The official birth announcement placed on the easel at Buckingham Palace, a tradition that goes back centuries, was missing the doctor's signatures. Why? Why would a doctor not want credit for delivering the Queen's great-grandson? Unless, of course, the events in that room didn't happen the way the public was told. Doctors are bound by ethics. They cannot sign a document that contains false timelines. They cannot validate a birth story that defies medical protocol. The absence of a signature is not just a break in tradition, it is a silent protest. It is a gap where a witness should be. And in the world of royal secrets, silence often speaks louder than any press release. The devil, they say, is in the details. And Prince Harry, in his eagerness to share his truth, has provided plenty of details that don't add up. One of the most famous slip-ups happened just days after Archie was introduced to the world. Harry and Meghan were doing a small press engagement, and Harry was holding the baby. A reporter asked who the baby resembled. Harry, in a moment of candor, replied, "Everyone says that babies change so much over 2 weeks." 2 weeks? At that point, Archie was supposed to be 2 days old. Why was Harry talking about the changes a baby goes through in 2 weeks? Was it a simple slip of the tongue? Perhaps. But when you combine it with the rest of the anomalies, it feels less like a mistake and more like a leak. It feeds into the theory that the timeline we were given was manipulated, that perhaps the baby was born earlier and the announcement was delayed to suit their schedule. And then there are the physical anomalies that internet sleuths have been obsessing over for years. We have all seen the videos. The footage of Meghan, heavily pregnant, squatting down with her knees together in high heels to pet a dog or pick up a flower. Any woman who has carried a full-term baby knows that your center of gravity shifts. Your pelvis widens. Squatting with knees together in 6-inch heels while 9 months pregnant is a feat of gymnastics that defies biology. It's these small physical impossibilities that have fueled the fire of skepticism. It's not just one thing. It's the accumulation of dozens of impossible moments that makes the official story feel like a performance. If the medical details are the smoke, the paperwork is the fire. The birth certificate of Archie Harrison Mountbatten-Windsor is a document that has undergone strange and unprecedented changes. Originally, the certificate listed the mother as Rachel Meghan, Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Sussex. This was standard. It listed her name. But weeks later, the certificate was quietly amended. Her first names, Rachel Meghan, were stripped away. The document now simply read, Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Sussex. Why? Why erase the mother's name? The palace initially stayed silent, then later claimed the change was dictated by the palace, a claim the palace then subtly denied. Legal experts and royal watchers have pointed out that name changes on birth documents are rare. They usually happen in cases of adoption or when legal parentage needs to be clarified. In the context of the rumors swirling around this birth, the erasure of her personal name is a red flag that cannot be ignored. It suggests a legal maneuvering that goes far beyond a simple stylistic choice. It suggests that the identity of the mother, or the legal status of the birth, was a matter of complex negotiation. And now, we must address the theory that will not die. The theory that is whispered in every comment section, debated in every forum, and alluded to by royal biographers like Lady Colin Campbell. The S word, surrogacy. For years, critics have asked, is it possible? Is it possible that the reason for the secrecy, the reason for the 2-hour discharge, the reason for the lack of doctor's signatures, and the reason for the contradictory medical stories is that Meghan did not carry the child herself? Let's look at the moon bump allegations. Thousands of people have analyzed footage of Meghan's pregnancy. They point to the day her bump appeared to sway from side to side. They point to the popping sound heard in a video when she leaned over. They point to the way the size of the bump seemed to fluctuate wildly from day to day, large one morning, smaller the next. Now, we must be clear. These are theories. There is no definitive proof. But the question is not, is it true? The question is, why does it look so fake? If the pregnancy was real and straightforward, why the need for such elaborate deception regarding the birth timeline? Why the secrecy? Why the stories that don't make medical sense? The internet doesn't invent conspiracies out of thin air. It builds them out of inconsistencies. And in this case, the inconsistencies are piled so high, they block out the sun. If they had simply told the truth, whatever that truth was, the rumors would have died. But by layering lie upon lie, by claiming 2 epidurals and a 1-hour recovery, they have created a vacuum where speculation thrives. They have made the public question the very biology of the event. When you step back and look at the entire picture, the image of Archie's birth is not a clear photograph. It is a collage of conflicting stories, impossible timelines, and medical errors. We have a prince claiming he inhaled the pain relief. We have a duchess claiming a deadly condition while jet-setting across the globe. We have a hospital discharge that breaks the laws of time and safety. And we have a birth certificate that has been scrubbed of the mother's name. This isn't just about catching them in a lie. It's about understanding the lengths to which they will go to control the narrative. They wanted a fairy tale. They wanted the candles, the music, the perfect, effortless birth. But real life and real medicine is messy. It is loud. It requires doctors and nurses and protocols. By trying to write a script that was better than reality, they ended up writing a script that was impossible to believe. As the years go on, and as more insiders from Portland Hospital and the palace begin to whisper, the cracks in the story are widening. The fairy tale is fading, and the cold, hard light of truth is starting to shine through. And the question that remains is the most dangerous one of all. If they lied about the birth, the most fundamental human event, what else have they been lying about? The story of Archie's arrival was meant to be a crowning moment. Instead, it has become the loose thread that might just unravel the entire tapestry of their post-royal lives. The truth is waiting, and unlike the press, it won't be silenced.